Hi everyone, welcome to the Cove. We're going to get started. So first off, I'd like to thank Stradling for sponsoring the Lunch and Learn series and for their overall support of UCI Applied Innovation. Today's speaker is Boris Epstein. Boris is co-founder and CEO of Bink, which is a prominent talent recruiting firm that has worked with some of the biggest Silicon Valley technology companies, including Airbnb, Pinterest, and Square. A UCI alumnus, Boris is passionate about recruiting and continuing to build his company to be the industry's go-to dedicated flexible recruiting team. He is here today to talk about creating the right value proposition to recruit top talent. Welcome, Boris.
Thank you, Haley. Hi, everybody. How's everyone doing today? Great. Thank you, Haley, for the introduction. Just a quick little bit about myself. I graduated from UCI back in '99, so great to be back here. Great to see what Irvine has done with the community. After graduation, made the choice to go into business, but not quite sure what I wanted to do in business. So after floundering around for at a couple of jobs, completely fell into recruiting. Fell in love with a profession. After working at a recruiting company for 1 year, decided to start Bink. And this year, we're very privileged to be celebrating our 16th year in business. We've always focused on the technology marketplace, really liked the opportunity to work on the cutting edge of something, and then really liked the velocity and speed of talent movement in the technology space. Because the market has evolved so much over the past 16 years, one of our goals to stay super relevant to talent and companies in our space is to pay attention to what the market wants and make sure that we're there to offer it to them. It's very important that we're able to offer a very distinguished approach to them and to our candidates. So the way that our model works, and I want to share with you a little bit about it just so you have context for what I'm going to share in the rest of the presentation. The way that our model works, we employ about 75 recruiters. When a client technology company needs a recruiter to help them fulfill on some sort of hiring demand, we let them use our recruiters in a dedicated and embedded fashion. So our recruiters operate under the brand of our clients. They have to come in a very short period of time. They have to help them achieve some sort of a hiring goal within, again, a very short period of time. And so it's our recruiters' jobs to be able to understand what the companies are looking for, understand their value proposition in a very compelling way, and then be able to accomplish what we're going to spend the next hour talking about, how to recruit top talent for these companies effectively. And so again, Haley mentioned some clients like Airbnb, Square, Pinterest. That's like the world that we live in, very highly contested, competitive space. And so to whatever degree you all are either recruiting for top talent, looking at yourself as a candidate that is potentially being recruited for talent, or working in a world where recruiting is relevant to you, hopefully you'll be able to find some tidbits of value from what we're doing. Just so I could get a sense of who all is in the room, and so everyone in this room could get a sense of who all else is here, I'm just going to ask a couple of quick questions and just kind of raise your hand if you fall into that camp or demographic. I know there's an innovation center. There's a pretty big startup community here. Raise your hand if you're a founder or a hiring leader of a local startup. Okay. Raise your hand if you're a recruiter or work in recruiting. Okay. Raise your hand if you are great at what you do and looking for a new opportunity. Okay. Okay, cool. Good to know. Hopefully others who had interest in all that were paying attention. So first question. If you had who here has heard of Google before? Okay. If you had the opportunity, if you could take everything you know now about Google, and if you can go back into time to when Google was a startup, would you join Google? Raise your hand if you would join Google. If you can go back in time. Raise your hand high. Okay. Raise your hand if you wouldn't join Google. This is knowing everything you know now about Google as a company. Raise your hand again. You're totally contradicting my theory now. Okay. My first theory and rule to recruiting top talent is that everybody is recruitable. It's common in our recruiting world to engage with a candidate, and we'll commonly ask the candidate, are you interested in this opportunity that I'm recruiting for? And it's very common for a candidate these days to say, no, I'm very happy where I am. And so the first thing that I think about and that we like to help our recruiters understand and believe is that everyone is recruitable because of this theory that we believe, which is that everyone would join Google if they had the opportunity to do that. So if we can approach the recruiting with the notion that everyone is recruitable, then that compels a recruiter, when the candidate says, no, I'm not interested in this opportunity, to say, well, let's talk about whether or not you would have joined Google back in when they were a startup. If the answer to that is yes, which most candidates would say is yes, let's then talk about what this opportunity needs to look like for you to join. So rule number one, everyone's recruitable. I want to shift to tell you a story about Walmart. Back in like 2013 or so about 5 years ago or so, we had the opportunity to recruit for Walmart. Some people, depending on your vision and perception of Walmart, would consider that to be a good thing. In Silicon Valley, where it's the sentiment is very startup focused, very technology industry focused, which makes the sentiment very not Walmart focused. And so the idea of recruiting for Walmart at the time was considered a very anti-popular thing to do. But what was happening at the time was Walmart had bought a startup that we were recruiting for, a startup called Cosmix. They were really into evaluating massive amounts of data and applying that data towards some sort of application. And so Walmart at the time was looking at technology as one of the few areas of investment that they could make in order to really accelerate their growth and maybe make a run at competing with Amazon, who was their biggest shopping competitor. And so leadership at Walmart came to us and had a very compelling, in our opinions, they had a compelling story for why their investment in this technology space made sense, the value of top talent joining Walmart, and why it would be important investment for us to make because of the impact that we could then make on the market and then make on Walmart as a company. So contrary to popular belief, and contrary to popular opinion, we as a company made the choice to take on the project with Walmart and pass on other more popular opportunities at the time and make a run at recruiting for Walmart. So fast forward a few weeks to our start date, our first day on the project, we had to have a very open conversation with our team because there was this fear that we're going to start recruiting for Walmart and people were going to completely shun us, not even shun us, but like aggressively come after us for recruiting for Walmart. It was considered like that big of a deal. So we had to have a very open understanding that there's the very real possibility that we might make 0 hires on this project. We might completely and abysmally fail. And so we acknowledged that was a possibility. We went for it anyways. We went out to the market. Walmart was asking us to recruit not only talent, but top talent. So we're asked to go after people from Google, from Twitter, from Facebook, from some of the top companies in the space. And so we did that. We believed that what Walmart was trying to do was compelling enough that it was worth our effort to go do that. So we sold the dream. We sold the story. We went out to the market and we presented that value proposition in a way that, in our mind, was compelling enough and should be compelling enough to that talent. For the first 30 days or so, we got a lot of no's. We got a lot of very angry notes asking us how dare we even think that they would consider an opportunity with Walmart. We didn't make a hire in our first month. Everyone rejected what we were considering until this one candidate. His name was Ravi Kant. He has a PhD out of Cornell. First job out of a PhD. It was a very highly contested skill set. He was considering Walmart and Google. And after getting to know Walmart, after getting to know Google, and after a lot of conversations about joining the team and why he should join Walmart, and we weren't sure if we were going to be able to get him, he ended up making the choice to join Walmart. It was the first hire that we made on that project. It was like the big fish that the company was believing that they could get, and we had now proof that we could get him. So it was like a huge thing. He ended up telling us, because I didn't believe that we can get him in the back of my mind, but I still went after it anyways. And he ended up telling us the reason that he joined Walmart was because of the impact that he thought he could make. So in his mind, if he went to Google, he would be just a small fish, big pond. The impact that he would make would be minuscule or negligible, meaning whether he was there or not, he wouldn't have made a difference in the bottom line of the company. But he knew because Walmart was starting this brand new team, he'd be one of the best of the team. He'd be able to move the needle a considerable amount based on his efforts. And so that was the reason he chose to join, because impact was the most important thing to him. I was like, that's good to know. People care a lot about impact. We now need to go represent this back to the market. There's a philosophy in general, but applied to recruiting. It's a powerful one, and it goes a little belief circle. But it starts with whatever you believe. So in our case, we believe there's an opportunity with Walmart. We believe that Walmart could attract the talent that they said they were looking for, even if it was contrary to popular belief. We believe they can go pull the people from Google, from Facebook, from Twitter, et cetera. That then created our potential, which means, because of the belief, we went out after those individuals. We tried to go get them. That then converted over into them into our pipeline, and then the results of them joining our team. Going back to belief, if we didn't believe that Walmart could attract this talent, we wouldn't have tried. We wouldn't have gotten the Ravi in play, and then we wouldn't have hired Ravi, and then we would have been right, because our belief said that, our beliefs told us that we couldn't have gotten them. So beliefs, impact potential, impact action, impact results. And so rule number 2 to attracting top talent is expand your belief for who you can recruit. So some of the people in this room said they were hiring. Just kind of think about that for a second around who is it that you're looking for? Who do you think would or wouldn't go for your opportunity for whatever reason it is that you're thinking that, and consider challenging that for a minute, open that up, and see if that changes some of your potential, some of your action, and then therefore your results. Okay. The first question, who remembers the first question that I asked? Would you join Google? And I thought, based on my belief system, that everyone would have raised their hand, but clearly different people have different belief systems. And so not everyone would have joined Google at the time. And so the message of this slide is, although Google was popular enough of an opportunity, if everyone could predict the future, high likelihood they would have joined. In reality, most people can't predict the future. Most people have different kind of ideas or feelings about whatever their ideal next opportunity is. And so even though it's compelling to me to go back in time and join Google, clearly not compelling to everyone in this room. And so the moral of this slide is every person has their own version of what their Google is. And so I like to start off all recruiting conversations with, what is your ideal opportunity? Most people will answer that with something very generic, or they won't answer it at all if there's like a trust barrier. But if you could, have that conversation to the point where that person would actually tell you, what is it that I would, leave my current situation for, then you could start a conversation. Half of the people in this room, or like 3/4 of the people in this room, raised their hand when they said, they're the founder or, leader of a company. While it's less common for even someone in your positions to consider new opportunities, you too have opportunities that you would consider, and maybe it's an opportunity, maybe it's an acquisition, maybe there's a dream partnership that you would change your situation for. Maybe bringing in some piece of talent might compel you to shift into a new opportunity. But the message of this opportunity, of this slide, is that your value proposition, whatever it is that you're presenting to your candidates, is relative. And so while you may have like a really strong idea for why something is compelling to you, it's more important, it's really only important that you recognize what is important to the demographic or the person that you're trying to recruit. So as it relates to recruiting top talent, understanding what their ideal opportunity is the rule number 3. Anyone have any questions? Yeah.
What if they're already working at
What if they're already working at their Google? If I'm talking to a candidate and I go through this exercise and they compel me to believe that they are already working for their Google, then I'll congratulate them. And I'll say, that's amazing.
Or get a job order.
I'll what?
Or get a job order.
Yeah, or get a job order, that's right. Yeah, that's right, that's right. I mean, that's awesome when people are really in their dream jobs and they're taking steps to go do that, and that's amazing. Then I'll congratulate them and move on. Okay. The message that I want to share in this slide is, anyone read Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink? Yeah, you guys read that? Basic concept of that book is people instinctively make blink decisions. That means that before you've even talked to a person, at the moment you've just decided to speak with that person, at the moment you've engaged with that person, within 1 second, you guys have already been in this room for 20 minutes, you've already decided whether you like this or not. But most people make blink decisions. And so after they make their blink decisions, they then spend their time either trying to validate those decisions, convince themselves that they are in fact right and it's the right decision to make to overcome all the fear of moving forward with that, or invalidate that because of whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish. 2 points that I want to make in this one is one, when I'm talking to a candidate or when I'm interacting with a candidate, I always like to know if their blink is that they're in and trying to figure that out, or if their blink is that they're out and then trying to figure that out. A lot of times it's hard for candidates to admit to things. It's not kind of like popular in society to say you want a job on the first, to say you want that job on the first call. We all have to kind of like play that game and dance that dance. But I like to know with my candidates if they're in as their blink decision, and then we're going to use the rest of the time to go validate that, or if they're out, and then we're going to go use the time to either help them overcome that initial blink decision, or maybe realize this isn't their Google, and then we move on. So that's 1 point from this one. The second point from this one is the awareness that while you guys in the position of the empowered positions that you have in terms of recruiting the talent that you're trying to recruit, you're really only one piece of the total kind of information set that's available to your candidates. And so think for a moment about all of the other information that's available in this world related to whether a candidate should join your opportunity or not. So things that would fall into that category would be your interviewing team. So after you engage your candidate, you get them all hyped up on your opportunity, they want to move forward, and then you have them meet with your interview team. Is your interview team going to support what it is that you're promoting and experience that you're creating, or are they going to invalidate that? If you're hiring, you may have a website. Is your website going to support the vision that you're creating with your candidates? Those are two things that you can control. Things that you can't control might be the media or the environment or popular belief. In the case of Walmart, there were people who we would try to recruit, and they would say, you know what, I like what you're doing. I want to join, but I would be like shunned by my community if I joined. And they were like straight up about that. And so that's a very real thing. And so we're like, all right, well, we can't control all of that. We would try to like control it by sending them like, piece of information that they can go share around with their friends or family or whatever. But some things can't be controlled. So just awareness of that is valuable. And so rule number 4 for recruiting top talent is just the recognition that your candidate has already made their decision. And so operating with that in mind will help. Okay, so recapping 4 rules to hiring top talent. Rule number 1, everyone is recruitable. Some people in here don't believe that, which is okay, but rule number 1 is that everyone is recruitable. Rule number 2, expand your belief for who you can recruit. It'll open up your potential, open up your possibility. Rule number 3 is your value proposition is relative. What's your candidate's Google? And then rule number 4, your candidate has already made their decision. Yes?
Can you expand on rule 4 a little bit more?
Yeah, the rule number 4 connects back to the concept of blink, where people like to make, people do make blink decisions about whether they like something, whether they want to do something, whether they want to move forward with something, whether that person wants to admit it or not. They've made a blink decision about whatever it is that they're trying to do. And so they then spend the rest of their time trying to either validate that or overcoming that. And so your candidate's already made their decision. It is valuable as a rule so that when you're engaging with your candidates, you can approach that conversation knowing that they're either in or out, in their gut, in their core, they're either in or out already, and then they're trying to confirm that. And then knowing that all of the other factors related to the candidate, decision-making criteria is something that they're going to use. So to the degree that you could, set that up in your favor is in your interest. For example, when we were recruiting for Walmart, they invested equal amount of money in recruiting as they did in PR. So PR was valuable to them because PR supported the story in the market that tech was important to the company. Tech was an enabler, big impact opportunity, big data, all this sort of stuff. And then that helped candidates validate their decisions that recruiting was trying to encourage. Yes?
You mentioned that you spent some time figuring out whether the person is in or out.
Yes.
What are some ways you do that?
I like to ask candidates, are you yes if, or are you no but? That's like a way that I would phrase that question. And then that person then has a little bit of safety to say, I'm yes, if, I'm yes as long as, or whatever. I'm no, but if this, if that, then maybe. A candidate that I was working with who was trying to play it like super cool and didn't really want to give up his cards around whether he was in or out, and we talked about if we talked about where he's leaning. That's like a softer way for someone to like admit if they're in or out. Are you leaning forward? Are you leaning back? So that's like one way to get someone. We like to at our company we use a closing technique where we ask them on a scale of 1 to 10. How ready are they to sign their offer? And then we give them the opportunity to pick a number. And then so a lot of candidates, for safety reasons, like to pick 5. And then we'll say if 5 weren't an option, are you a 4 or a 6? So we play little games just to understand where they're at, and then we could set the rest of the stuff up for them.
Can I ask the audience to use these or the speaker to repeat the question so we all heard it?
Yes. That question that I just answered was, how do you get your candidates to tell you if they're in or out, or what their decision is? That's a really good question. Yes?
At what point in your funnel have they already made their decision? Is this when they are seeing the email, or is this when they're sitting in front of you? At what point have they already made their call?
I believe that they've made their decision right at the beginning. So when they first receive their inbound email from you and they make the choice to either respond or not, I believe that they've made their decision to be in or out, to make a job change or not.
Yeah. And at that point, is that when you decide, okay, it's time to give them the story and sell them the dream? Or do you kind of wait, do you kind of withhold to keep the mystery?
The question was, at what point in the funnel or in the interview process do you expect the candidate to decide to know whether they're in or out? And my answer to that is right at the very beginning. And then the next question was, what strategy do you use, or what do you tell them to move them forward in the process, knowing that they've already made their decision? Knowing that one, a candidate has already made their decision, and then 2, knowing that there's a lot of preconceived expectations around what a process and experience should look like. We'll use both of those to guide our efforts moving forward. So in the beginning, in the intro pitch, we know that candidates expect to see in an email handful of sentences about what an opportunity might look like in order to compel them to move forward. So the goal is to optimize for them to move forward in the process to whatever that next step is.
Oh, sorry, and then just one follow-up. How many touches on average for you to get a response?
how many touches?
On your first attempt, right? So until they respond, how many touches on average does it take you to get them to respond? It's crazy to think that they'll respond the first time, right? I mean, at least everybody would be kind of the same.
Yeah. So the question is how many touches how many times you have to engage a candidate in order to get them to respond. One, not every candidate responds, and so that's just that's something that we believe. And then two, I don't know. They say somewhere between three to six attempts is what it takes to get someone to respond. Most of our recruiters engage a candidate between 2 to 3 times before they move on, and then from there they're engaging them on a less frequent basis. Our recruiters are for the most part making the assumption that if a candidate doesn't respond within their first 2 to 3 attempts, that someone else is better suited for that time for that opportunity.
What methods do you guys use to reach out to those candidates?
Question is, what methods do we use to reach out to these candidates? There's 2 parts to engaging a candidate. One is the message. So what's the value proposition? We're going to spend the next half of the session talking about the creation of your value prop message. So one, create the message is step 1. Step 2, how do we engage our candidate? What method do we use? Any communication tool that is reasonable for that candidate. So it could be a LinkedIn message, it could be an email, it could be a phone call, it could be an in-person event, it could be whatever we think is most conducive. Our recruiters send the most emails, probably followed by LinkedIn, and then drops off significantly from there. The question was, do our recruiters text? Definitely not as a first engagement, but very frequently throughout the interview process. Yes. Oh, sorry, right behind you.
So good night number 2. What are some of the red flags that kind of make you not contact the candidate? So think about people in transition, people that keep changing companies. So what stops you from contacting somebody?
Good question. So the question is related to rule number 2, which is expand your belief for who you can recruit. What prevents us from reaching out to a candidate, or what are the reasons we wouldn't reach out to a candidate? Common reasons that recruiters look for to recruit a candidate is I'll tell you what we do look for, and then I'll tell you what we look for as reasons to not. If the opportunity that we're representing, if we believe that the company and the situation that the person's in is if it's going to be compelling to that person, then that's what we'll look for. So if the person works for a company that we believe is in the same market or same demographic or same ecosystem to what we're recruiting for, that might be a reason to reach out to them. If the person has been at their job for a longer period of time than what we see as common for other people from that company. If we know that people from that company might be leaving, and then that might be another reason that we'll reach out to that person. 1-year anniversaries happen to be popular times to reach out to talent. Reasons that we wouldn't reach out to a candidate, and these are based on stories we tell ourselves about the believability of someone being likely to move on. If someone just started at a company, there's a general belief that they wouldn't leave that soon into their job. If a company is believed to be hotter than the company you're recruiting for, there's a general belief that that person wouldn't leave for your opportunity. If the company is known for strong attraction and retention of people, and you believe you won't be adequate at competing for that talent, that's a common reason for recruiters to not reach out to that candidate. Anything that associates with lower likelihood of getting that person.
So the fact that the person doesn't have a job is not they are in transition.
Doesn't play that big of a factor in our market. We primarily recruit for technology companies, so it's becoming more common for people to leave their current job, take some sort of a break and period of time off for maybe a extended vacation or some personal reason, and then restart a job search. So it's not as taboo in our market anymore. If there was a considerable period of time, like years, then we might, our recruiters might, have a judgment about, their rustiness related to whatever new job we're considering. Okay, I'm going to move on, and then we'll have some time. Oh, I'm sorry. Last question.
You find that people don't use the phone as often now as when you started?
The question was, do we find that people don't use the phone as often versus when over the time that we've been in recruiting? We found that there's definitely aversion to using the phone as a first point of contact. People are answering their phones less. People are checking. We found in our experience they're answering their phones less as a first contact. They're checking their voicemails less as a first contact. And so our recruiters see a lower likelihood of engagement based on using the phone to establish initial contact, and so we don't do that. The phone, however, is a main means of communication throughout the process. And so after we compel a candidate to speak with us via email or LinkedIn, then we'll jump on a phone call and then speak with them, and then continue to speak with them through the process. Okay, so the second half of the presentation is going to talk about value propositions. In our mind, because our job is to go embedded into these companies, and we have to, in a very short period of time, figure out what is it going to take for some candidate, for some individual who's not looking for an opportunity to be interested in this opportunity. And so the word that we use to talk about that is value proposition. So we, comparatively to the recruiting market, we believe we overinvest in the development of a value proposition because we believe that everyone is recruitable, because we believe that if there's a compelling reason for a company to want to hire that person, then there is a way to shape that message. There's a message there that is going to be compelling to that person. We believe that, and so because of that, we overinvest in value propositions. I'll share with you what our framework is for the creation of a value proposition, and what I'll walk through this with you. I'll tell you where I got this, where we got this framework from. Write down the name, if you want to follow up on this, write down the name James Buckhouse. James Buckhouse. James Buckhouse, we heard him speak at a presentation a few years ago, and it fit what we were doing in a nice framework, and so we adopted it and then continued along with it. James Buckhouse was a head storyteller from DreamWorks. He wrote Madagascar. He wrote Shrek. He was in the business of storytelling. At that time, he had moved on to Twitter. He was like head storyteller for Twitter, and his job at the time was to watch, look at tweets and then create stories out of what was happening in those tweets, and then create an experience where they associate Twitter with experiences with stories, and so that was his thing. And so since he was talking at a recruiting conference, he had to tell us something that was relative to recruiting. And so what he told us was the application of a story creation framework to recruiting. And so the way that the framework goes is every candidate cares about four different levels as it relates to why they're joining the company. The first thing that they care about is the role that they'll be in. What's my job? The second level is what's the team that I'm going to be a part of? Who am I going to be working with? The next level is what is the company that I'm going to be a part of? And then the fourth level is where in the world does all of this fit? How do I make sense of where this fits? So those are the four tiers for the value prop. And so when we go into a company and we have to come up with a compelling pitch or a compelling message for that target candidate, we'll follow this 4-tier value prop framework to guide our content. Because it's most common when you go into a company, you ask a hiring leader, tell you about the role, about the opportunity. They'll tell you all of this stuff, but usually in like a mishmashed sort of a way, and you have to for yourself kind of suss it all out. And so we structure that we structure all that content into these four respective parts. So the first thing that we'll talk a little bit about is role. So the compelling aspects of a role could include any of those following points. Could include the responsibilities. It's possible that the actual job they'll be doing, the work they'll be doing, is the compelling piece of that opportunity. It's possible there's going to be a learning and development or a growth or a career acceleration or a career advancement component to it that's particularly compelling to that candidate. It's possible that candidate, if you're a small startup and you're a notable leader for some reason, the person you're trying to hire, their access to you might be what's notable to the opportunity. It's possible you're working with some distinguished technologies or set of tools or et cetera that might be compelling. Maybe this person will have access to customers they wouldn't have access to otherwise. Scope is a really big value point when candidates are considering opportunities. It's common at larger companies for scope to be narrower versus at larger companies. It tends to be a little bit at smaller companies. Sorry, it tends to be a little bit on the wider side. Impact is obviously a huge thing. We talked a little bit about the story of Ravi Kant, who joined Walmart because of the impact that he was going to be making. Exclusivity, it's possible that working at this company might get the candidate the very unique opportunity to build ABC technology or to work with XYZ customer or take on XYZ responsibility that's going to be differentiated from all of these other opportunities that they're considering. Or it could be something related to the logistics like compensation or benefits or lifestyle. A lot of different things and angles you can go in depending on what your opportunity is, but really focusing in on what the role is this level. Any questions on role before we jump to team? Okay, team. Every person that you hire, whether you've defined it or not, is going to be a part of the team. Maybe if you're really small, maybe your whole team is your whole company. Maybe if you're a little bit bigger, you have it segmented out. Maybe it's the engineering team, maybe it's the marketing team, maybe it's the sales team, whatever. But building a box around the team, defining the team in some shape or form. When we were recruiting for Walmart, they had a concept called the two-pizza team. Has anyone ever heard of the two-pizza team concept? Two pizza, like the Domino's pizza, the two-pizza team concept. Has anyone, yeah, you heard of that? The two-pizza team concept is basically no team is bigger than what it can take to eat two pizzas. So that basically is like their way of saying that no team will be bigger than like 8 to 10 people. And so, we heard leaders negotiate that by saying, well, how big could the pizza be? I've seen some pretty big pizzas. But 8 to 10 people is about what they try to keep their teams to. That's a concept that was taken from Amazon. I don't know where Amazon got that from. But their teams were presented as two pizza teams. That was compelling to candidates because they knew then they wouldn't get lost within big Walmart. There was like a very defined team. And then we presented the concept of every team is multifunctional and expected to operate as a business unit. And so what that meant is every team had a business charter. Every team had engineers as well as designers as well as business leaders. And they had a very specific business charter that they were trying to achieve. That was compelling to candidates because they knew that they wouldn't just be one of 50 engineers sitting in a dark room. They would be part of a specific unit that has specific vision, specific initiative. And so that was just, a way that team was able to compel some value to being a part of a team. And these are some other attributes that can be associated with team. So what I want to do right now is ask that everybody find a buddy. So look at the person next to you. And if there's not someone next to you, then find a person. Find a person. Find a person. Raise your hand if you need a person. Find a buddy. When you find your buddy, I'd like you to each take 30 seconds to share to your buddy what's exciting about a role or team that either you're recruiting for or maybe have available on your team or know about, just to go through the exercise of sharing a little bit about a role or about a team. So each of you share for 30 seconds. We'll come back in 1 minute. If I want to ask the audience to share some information back with me right now, can I use that mic? Ask them to come up and share? Oh, okay. Oh, got it. Okay. All right. Let's bring it back, everybody. Let's bring it back. Let's bring it back, everybody. Let's bring it back. Let's bring it back. All right. I know value props are exciting. This is awesome. This is awesome. Thank you, everybody, for participating in that. Hopefully you got value from both sharing a little bit about your value proposition and hearing about others' value props. What I would like to ask now is for anyone who heard something from the other person's value proposition to please come up and share a little bit about what the other person shared with you about their value proposition. Anyone who heard anything that they liked about the other person's value proposition, please share with us. No one got sold. Please share. Come tell us.
I like that my partner, she kind of talks about, well, she sold me on kind of a smaller business culture and having, different sorts of training and development tools, which could be really attractive to a candidate.
That's so cool. Thank you. Thank you. Please, share.
So we had a really good partnership. She did a great job really kind of bringing me in and getting me involved in the company culture. At first it started out as kind of a typical culture discussion, and she was starting to lose me. And then she really started discussing the social events that were occurring and how they actually bring the team together. So it was done in, I think, a much more familiar way that made me feel like this stuff really happens. Because oftentimes culture and getting people engaged is something that's up on the wall, but it's not something that actually occurs on a team. Yeah. But she was able to convey this feeling like it really happens there, and people probably enjoy working with one another.
That's great. Thank you.
The person who I spoke with articulated really clearly that he was looking to build a team, specifically in the technology space, that he wanted to be able to build a team where they were kind of their own sandbox, like they were somewhat autonomous within the organization if they existed.
Okay. That's great. That's great. Thank you. Anyone else who would like to share? Okay, well, I appreciate you going through that exercise. Hopefully you, again, found value from both sharing and hearing. Now we get the opportunity to expand our view to company, right? So every person is in a role, and that role is a part of a team, and then companies are made up of multiple teams. And so what are the things happening at companies? Usually a company has an organization. So there's some sort of like organizational structure that might be compelling to the candidate. Perhaps there's something distinguished about the leadership of that company. Maybe there's some notoriety around CEO or the technology leadership or whatnot that could be attractive to that candidate. The diversity of the company and of the team may be a valuable contributor if the candidate is valuing a diverse and inclusive environment to be a part of and contribute to. Culture, we just spoke about. It's a very powerful way to differentiate your company from others, to help create that kind of sense of authenticity in your company, help kind of make your company like feel kind of more humanistic in the eyes of the candidate. Funding is obviously a very popular contributor. Knowing that you got funding helps create confidence, helps create association with investors. People, associate some part of equity, some part of ownership. So funding is a really popular way to tie that together. Unique positioning. If you're in a space that has a number of others that are doing something similar, what is it that makes you unique and different? Like, our Bink, we refer to ourselves as a dedicated, flexible recruiting team. Recruiting's super generic, but that's a way that we talk about ourselves to help us, find that unique positioning in the market. Impact, what difference is the company making, as associated to whatever problems it is that they're trying to solve. And then exclusivity. So exclusivity can associate with feeling special because of association, but it could also associate with likelihood of success. If you're in a market that's crowded and you've differentiated in a compelling way, then you have exclusive access to some goal or whatever that you might be trying to achieve. And the last one, this is one that I found most companies or value propositions either hit well or miss altogether. The world is where you want to kind of pop way outside your company and talk about what's going on in the world that's even creating relevance for your existence. And so you want to talk about what's happening in society that may be relevant to your company existing. It's common if you're working in the healthcare space to talk about the kind of prevalence of problems that might exist that your company is specifically built to solve for. You might want to talk about the community that you're serving if you're focused on a local community or a global community. And in this specific level, you're talking specifically about what's happening in the world. You're not even really talking about how your company is applying it. You're saying, this is what I'm seeing in the world. This is the perspective that exists that compels our existence. Humanity, if you're working for an artificial intelligence startup, if you're working for an AR/VR startup, if you're working for a space tech company or something like that, you're talking a lot about concepts in humanity and how your company may be trying to further some of that. Elon Musk and Tesla is talking about the application of energy to solve some of humanity's problems. Real or not, that's that person's view of the world, and that creates that connection between the candidate and that opportunity. Trends that are happening in the world. If you're in recruiting, you may be aware that baby boomers are retiring at an accelerated rate. That's creating an exposure in leadership at companies. And so if you're considering an opportunity at a company where leadership is an attractive prospect, then that might be a trend that is valuable for you to know about, because you could do some really cool stuff with that. Opportunities, again, global, local, depending on what it is that you're considering. What I'd like to do now is re-break up into groups, but this time focus specifically on company and world. So share with your partner a little bit about what's happening in the world and how your company is addressing that. And then share back, and then we'll bring it back in a minute and a half.
not part of this discussion. Proposition. Elon Musk needs a new chief engineer, he needs a new head of manufacturing operations, and let's say he needs a new marketing manager. How tough would that assignment be?
Par for course. Not tough. Standard. Very standard. Yeah, very standard.
I take it you don't work much with startups because they don't have any money?
We work with startups that are funded. So if a startup has like seed funding or received an initial round of funding, that's usually the earliest that they bring us in. Before they get funding, usually the founders do most of the recruiting until they get their funding. Okay, let's bring it back, everybody. Let's bring it back. Let's bring it back. Let's bring it back. Let's bring it back. Let's bring it back, guys. Let's bring it back, everybody. All right. All right, it's great to see the passion and energy in the room, especially. Let's bring it back, everybody. All right. Great to see the passion and energy in the room, especially around stuff going on in the world. It's good to know that the work that people are doing in this room is relevant to some big problems and opportunities. Who would like to share a little bit about what they heard from their partner?
So I think Robert did an excellent job. I don't think he needs this because it convinced me that to beat the doorstep to his company. So basically he shows that his company is developing something to do with empathy software to make, and we need that today. And so I think with just that one word, we're developing a software to be more empathetic. I can see in customer service, problem resolution. He doesn't need us. Everybody wants that.
That's huge. Thank you. Thank you. Who else heard something compelling that they would like to share? Come on, hook your partners up. Someone heard something that they liked. Okay. Well, hopefully you then secretly liked it. And you got some good value again out of both sharing a little bit about how your value prop relates to company and world, and both heard a good example. Sometimes these are more obvious. Sometimes takes a little bit of stretching creativity to land on the right one. And so now what we do is we put it together. And for this, I'd like to call up a very special volunteer. Thank you, Bobby, for volunteering. Our friend Bobby. Join me, Bobby. Bobby's gonna put it all together for us in the most compelling and animated way possible. He's gonna put this whole value proposition framework together for us. Can you read that for us?
Not really. I need my glasses.
Come right over here. You could read it right over there. Yeah, come up to the mic for us.
Sorry.
Get us excited about this.
Let's see. You'll get to, let me read it first. Oh, so you'll get to fill this special role as part of this amazing team at this bomdizzle company, all working together to make a super duper difference in the world, so our kids can experience a brighter future. Come on now, sign the deal.
Thank you, Bobby. Give Bobby a big round of applause.
Next time I'll read my glasses.
That's right. All right, so obviously super generic, but this is how it comes together. This is how this one comes together. And so as you're putting together your value proposition, right, because remember the 4 rules, right? Everyone's recruitable. Expanded your belief about who you can get. Your opportunity is going to be relevant to the mindset of the person you're trying to recruit. And then remember that person already made their decision. And so once you go through that full exercise of understanding what your value proposition, the role level, team level, company level, world level, put it all together. And it could be put together in literally as simple as a single sentence, and that single sentence can be used in an email pitch, in a LinkedIn pitch or whatnot. And obviously this could be expanded on when you're communicating with your candidate and looking for that consistency in them speaking with your interviewing team and reading about your company on the website and whatnot. So with that, who's ready to recruit some top talent? And we will go to questions. The end. So any questions, or do we finish and then?
I'd just like to see the slide on the world.
The slide on world? Sure. There you go. Question?
So I had a question. So there's a lot of people here that are founders or in innovation labs, so that's logical. Do you have any advice for people as we're building our first teams of these companies? Oftentimes we're cash strapped, so we're talking about working with equity, but we want to find people who are passionate and driven about what we're doing.
Yeah.
Any tips for the people in that space?
Yeah, I would. I'd follow along the framework of what we just went through. First, starting with the believability that anyone who you want is recruitable, and so really stretch your imaginations around who you want. First, don't be scared to say, I want that person, even though that person may seem like the most unattainable person. And then go through the exercise of understanding what is truly valuable about your opportunity. Why are you investing your energy into it? Why are others in your community investing their energies into this? What is the big problem that you are trying to resolve? Work through the effort of putting that into a compelling pitch, and then make that pitch. And it could, email or LinkedIn or fairly passive ways. But if you want that person, go find them at an event. Go come up with a way, get introduced through a network, find a way to get that connection, and then pitch them. While you're pitching them, understand what their ideal opportunity is. Try to make sense of that and connect that to what it is that you're trying to do. That's what I would do. Question?
Yeah, just off of the founders train thing. Anyway, how did you get Walmart when they came to you?
We were recruiting for the question was, how did we get Walmart as a client? We were recruiting for the startup that they purchased. And the big value proposition that startup had for Walmart is we come with a recruiting engine. They didn't have us locked down, and we didn't know that when they made that pitch to Walmart, but that became part of their reason for bringing us in to the opportunity. Yes?
Could you expand a little on the fourth rule that your client has already made up their mind? Can you expand a little on that?
Yeah. The basic concept in brief is just following along with Malcolm Gladwell's blink concept. Everyone has already made a blink decision about whatever it is that's being considered, and then they spend the rest of their time trying to validate that or overcome that. And so they already have a bias about whether or not they want to join a startup, whether or not they want to make that commute, whether or not they want to work on that problem. They have some sort of association with it, and they're either in or out at default. And then working, one, understanding that, and two, creating the messaging and the consistency to support that. Brittany.
So as far as, so with a lot of the soft search candidates that I speak with, I don't have enough time to be like, this is the role, this is the team, this is the company. What do you think is the most, at least to you, what's the most important thing if you just have 30 seconds, like, to talk about when recruiting?
If the question was, if you have a short amount of time, how do you kind of squeeze all that in to really compel the candidate to move forward? Was that the question?
I always talk about our company culture because I think it's super important and I think that we're really good at it. But I don't have time to tell them this is exactly what you'd be doing and this is the exact team you'd be working on. But I focus on company culture, but what do you focus on if you just have that quick time?
If I have, so we didn't have time to cover this in the presentation, but we like to create pitches both in 4-story pitches, so there's a very kind of clear and succinct summary of what it is that the opportunity is. Next is a 30-second pitch, and then a 5-minute pitch. And then putting it all together in this case does touch on all of those points in one sentence. And so I would either do one of two things. I would either find a compelling way to include all of the points of the opportunity, but in a compressed way, and that could be either a pitch or written. Or if I have a really good sense of what my target demographic finds attractive about an opportunity, then I would really hyper-focus on that within my short period of time. So if you know that your target candidates really value culture, and that's like the thing that the people who you've hired have told you over and over again, then I would highlight that in my pitch. So it's possible that what you're doing is like the most effective thing you should be doing. Yes?
How do you account for cultural differences across like global regions when you're achieving hypergrowth but maintain company-wide consistency in your hiring practices?
The question was, how do you create a global message while accounting for local differences in hiring practices? That's a big question. We could spend a whole afternoon on that. I would focus on conveying the message into these points. So there's something that's happening in the world that compels the company to even exist in the first place, especially if it's a global player. There's something happening at the company that can touch on the global point. So if Walmart, for example, had stores in 96 countries or something like that, they had 10,000 stores, and so that was part of what the global opportunity looked like. And then so when we connect back down to these teams of people had the opportunity to work on initiatives that impacted that whole world. So it's possible I'll talk a little bit about what the team culture is, as well as what the company culture is. And so maybe those 2 points are valuable and attractive to the candidate. So I would respect the differences and then put them in their appropriate frames so that the candidate understands what they're considering and where it all fits. Yes?
So for founders trying to bootstrap that put it all together so they have their defined value proposition, but they don't have a particular personality, how do they source candidates? Like how do they create that pipeline? What do you recommend?
The question was if a startup is bootstrapped and they're trying to, but they don't have a specific target candidate in mind, how do they build a pipeline? I would, if I were working with that founder, I would work with them to understand what their target candidate is, because it's, if they have a job that needs to be done, then there's some demographic in the market that fits the qualifications of that job being done, and so I'd create a written version of what that target is, and then whatever that target is what I would build I'd use to create search criteria.
Yeah, so I guess that's what I was getting at. So search tools, like what do you recommend the best use of the founder's time? I can't afford a recruiter. Like is it LinkedIn, Indeed, or are there any tips and tricks just that you could suggest to us?
If the question was what are the tips and tricks to either identify candidates or engage candidates for the benefit of recruiting. If I'm a founder, I'm investing my energy after I have my value proposition and my target candidate to get as many coffee meetings as possible with target talent. So I'm engaging them via LinkedIn, via email, via events for the purpose of getting them to spend 30 minutes with me so that I could walk them through our value proposition, understand and respect where they're coming from, and see if there's an opportunity that we could mutually consider forward. That's what I've seen be most successful with startups who are trying to build their first team. Big part of their job is recruiting, and the hustlers win in that case. Yes?
How do you do like the vetting process for, let's say I met somebody in a networking event and he's the right fit for my company, but I don't know if it would just be like all talk and no action. Like if you look for his background, can you actually like call their references, or how do you do that? How's the vetting process for you to actually offer somebody? If I don't have like the money to go for a search company.
Yeah. He's asking how do you, if you meet someone in an event, how do you evaluate them for your opportunity? Again, it connects back to the question that was previously asked around what's the target demographic of the candidate that you're looking for. If I'm working with a company, I like to understand what previous companies this target talent is working for, what communities are they a part of, what job experiences should they have, where might they exist in our market. And so when I'm meeting a candidate at an event, I'm looking for any of those indicators to tell me if that person is likely to fit that demographic or not. So I'm asking them what they do. I'm asking them, you know, what company they work for. And those are two pretty big indicators to tell you whether you should continue talking to that person. And then, you know, if they do meet your criteria, then you want to move them forward into whatever your interview process is to evaluate for that talent. I'll take one more question. I think we're, yeah. Any questions? Okay, that was the last question. Thank you guys. I really appreciate your time.